Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Buckeye Politics. It's me, your favorite Ohioan. Hope you're all having an excellent weekend. Hope you all watched the Trump rally last night in Delaware, Ohio. It was pretty based, pretty epic. It was definitely one of Trump's better rallies, in my opinion, since he's kind of came back. He had a couple of really solid ones. He's had a couple of really crappy ones, but I think yesterday was definitely one of his better ones, which hopefully means good things to come for our movement and the future. So with that, we're gonna get into the video. And this is kind of gonna be a different video. So I'm going to fill in all these states that are not filled in right now are states that I believe are semi-competitive or may become competitive in the future. Now, I obviously don't think that Biden's going to win Kansas. I don't think that Trump's going to win New Jersey in 2024. That's not going to happen. But what I want to do, as you saw in the title of this video, is put how I think all these states will trend in the future. So this is not my prediction for 2024. It's just how I think the states are going to trend in the future. Maybe 10, 20 years from now, I'd say how I think these states will vote compared to how they vote now. So, like, some of these states I might fill in as, like, lean Republican. I don't think it doesn't mean I think that they're going to be Republican in 10 years or so. It just means I think compared to today, they're going to be more Republican leaning. Same thing for the Democrats. So with that, we're going to start, I don't know, should we go east? Let's go east to west. We haven't done that in a while. We used to always do that. We're going to start in Maine's 2nd District. So Maine's 2nd District, I think, is going to vote a little bit more Republican. I think we have a lot of room to grow with middle class and blue-collar voters in that part of the state. It's very rural, very white. It's kind of a populist area that shifted back and forth between Trump and Obama. Let's look at it. It took one of the largest shifts from 2012 to 2016, alongside North Dakota, Iowa, and West Virginia. So I think we have a lot of room to grow in Maine 2nd District. However, there are a lot of especially near like Bangor, there's actually a lot of Republican holdouts, like people who voted Republican for a long time, but now don't like Trump. So that's the only reason I have it as lean Republican. It's definitely going to continue to trend Republican, and it will definitely be safe Republican. But I think that we may just have a little more. It won't be as Republican people think it will be. The great state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire is such a weird state to look at. I'm probably going to put that in also in the lean Republican column. A lot of libertarian-esque types have been moving to the state. A lot of and those libertarian-esque types, the like new right, not new right, they're like moderate on social issues, but conservative on fiscal issues, and they're definitely like it really would depend on the nominee. I think overall New Hampshire will be a little bit more Republican, but it's really gonna be a swing state that doesn't really go anywhere. The state of Maine at large, I think is actually gonna be likely Republican in all honesty, and to compare it to now, it's probably gonna looking at Maine's trends. Maine's Maine at large from 2012 to 2016 was R+6. It did trend a little bit to the left, but in what a D+4 national environment in 20, excuse me here, a D+4 national environment, Maine turned 8 points to the right. But compared to 2012, it was only it was still 6 more points to the right, 6 points to the right. So really, Maine at large, and I mean even compared to 2008, which isn't a great metric. So let's look at 2004. It's pretty much been static. But I do think that's going to change. There's a lot of white working class voters in Maine that are going to switch to the GOP. So I don't think it's going to be like a safe Republican state. I think it's going to be a lot more competitive than most people think. The state of Rhode Island, I'm also putting that in the likely are column. I don't think the Republicans will flip Rhode Island, but I mean, look, 2016 to 2012, it took one of the biggest shifts to the right, almost 11 points. Trump nearly won the state by he won the state by a huge margin. Well, he didn't win it. He lost it. But it was actually a lot more competitive than it was in the past. I think he only lost it by like 12 or so. Similar story with Connecticut and New Jersey. I'm not New Jersey, Connecticut and Delaware, which we'll get to in a second. But really, Rhode Island is just an interesting state because the people there, they're fiscally pretty liberal and almost progressive on certain economic issues. But socially, they're actually relatively conservative. They're very Catholic. So Rhode Island is just a really weird state politically. But I do think that with the GOP's new kind of more economic nationalism, economic populism, will be able to win some of those more economically progressive type voters over. And with the Democrats going further left on social issues, I think a lot of those voters will actually switch to the GOP. So I think Rhode Island is definitely a state that we're going to see be Republican in the future. Connecticut, I'm also putting in the lean Republican. I think it's. I don't think Republicans are going to flip Connecticut, but I think it'll be much more competitive than it is now. From 2016 to 2020, it shifted 6 points to the left, which, considering D+4 national environment, is only like a 2-point shift, which isn't drastic. But compared to 2012, it also shifted to the left. 2012 to 2016, it shifted to the right. So really, Connecticut's pretty static, but I do think it's going to take slight shifts to the right. On the local level, it's definitely getting a bit more Republican, but really, Connecticut, it's not really going anywhere. I think it'll be more Republican than it is now, but the GOP is not going to have a chance at winning it. State of New Jersey. let's see, 2012 to 2016, New Jersey went more Republican. 2016 to 2020, New Jersey only went about a point more Democratic, and with a lot of blue collar voters in the southern part of the state, ancestral Democrats, and suburban types near New York City actually voting for Jack Ciattarelli. I think New Jersey is going to be a lean to probably even likely Republican state. I don't think the like I said, I don't like similar with Rhode Island. I don't think Republicans are going to necessarily win the state of New Jersey, but I think they will make massive gains. I think we have a lot of room to gain in southern New Jersey with the blue collar types. Those voters are very similar to places in like the Midwest, like the Driftless in terms of their politics, and parts of Ohio, Michigan, and those places still narrowly vote Democratic. So we have a lot of room to gain there. And with the suburbs taking a slight shift to the right for taking a big shift to the right actually in some cases near near New York City, I think that's a good sign for the future of New Jersey. So New Jersey is likely voting likely Republican compared to how it is now. The state of Delaware is actually also going to be likely Republican. Delaware 2012 to 2016, 7 points more Republican. 2016 to 2020, 7 points more Democratic. That's really because of Joe Biden. If you look at the polls for Delaware, if it was Trump versus anyone besides Biden, the Democrats only were up by like 5 points in Delaware. Delaware really it's only went to Biden because of Biden. Really, any other Democrat, Delaware is going to be actually relatively competitive. I don't think Republicans will flip it. But actually, 10, 20 years from now, I could possibly see Delaware flipping, not 2024. But Delaware, like I said, it's a very interesting state to look at. I think it's going to be likely Republican. Instead of Pennsylvania, I am also going to put in the likely Republican column. Republicans have a lot of room to gain with blue-collar voters in near Scranton. I think that inner city Philadelphia, for whatever reason, took a huge shift to the right. I think that will continue because of the GOP's messaging. Everyone says we got to stop pandering to African Americans, but like it did help us a little bit. It didn't help us win, and it shouldn't be our main focus. But we should keep up that vote because we did do very well with those people, and it kept some states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, not maybe Michigan. Other parts just actually relatively competitive. New York took a huge shift to the right. So I think that Republicans and Pennsylvania is going to be a likely Republican state. The GOP, other than the presidential level, has actually dominated in Pennsylvania in recent elections. Other than the 2020 presidential election, 2018 Senate election, like 2018 was a blue wave year, so I don't really count that. But like 2020, 2021, besides the presidential race, the Republicans have dominated statewide in Pennsylvania. I expect that to continue in 2022. So Pennsylvania, likely Republican. Virginia going to tilt to the Democrats. I think it's going to basically be pretty much stagnant. Maybe it might tilt. Maybe actually I'm going to put tilt Republican because it probably will slightly move to the right. I think in 2024, but in the future I doubt it's really going to go anywhere. It's pretty much going to be D+10 in a good year. Probably get it like D+6, D+7. But right now I think in the future it's going to be pretty much stagnant. Maybe because of Youngkin implementing some policies and kind of scaring away those DC types to Maryland and really doing much better with the suburban voters near Virginia Beach. It might move a little bit to the right, but really it's going to be pretty stagnant. North Carolina, I would have put North Carolina as like a lean Democrat state. I used to think North Carolina would flip blue by the end of this decade, but I do no longer believe that. I think North Carolina is going to lean to the GOP simply because we are just gaining so many voters in North Carolina. In the last week, the Republican Party has gained like 2,000 new voters in North Carolina. A lot of people talk about the Republicans moving to like Florida, but I think a lot of them are actually also moving to North Carolina and registering with the GOP. And plus, if you look at North Carolina's county map, there are a lot of blue collar, like 98% white counties that are very rural, very white, very working class. We're only getting like 60% of the vote in. So we're going to do much better in those counties. I think we're also going to make slight improvements in the suburbs with the new voters moving in. And North Carolina, people don't talk about it, but there are a lot of conservatives from the Midwest and the Northeast moving there, similar to Florida. So I think North Carolina is going to make a shift to the right. I don't think it's going to be like an R+6, R+10 state, but I think it's going to be a solidly Republican +4, Republican +5. So I think North Carolina will translate to the right. State of Georgia, that's gone for the GOP. That's likely D. It's sad to say, but unfortunately, I think Republicans will win Georgia in 2022, just because of a good wave year, not fully gone yet. So I think Brian Kemp or David Perdue should win the governorship, although it will be very close against Stacey Abrams. But at the Senate race, I think Herschel Walker should win by like 3, 4, maybe even 5 points at this point. He's dominating Raphael Warnock in basically every single poll. But really, after the 2022 and 2024, it might tilt to the Republicans if Trump or whoever the nominee is runs a good campaign. I think they can win Georgia, and they probably will. But after that, it's going to be a lot close. It's going to be very close, and I think it's going to be gone after that. So I think 10, 20 years from now, Georgia is going to be a likely D state, and it's going to maybe even be safety compared to how it is now, honestly. State of Florida, it's going to be likely Republican. I don't think Florida's going to be like an R plus 20 state or R plus 15 state like I've heard some people say. I think it's going to be around R plus 10, R plus 15, similar to Iowa and Ohio. Florida is definitely trending Republican, but the Democrats do have some areas where they still have a solid voting block in, which is the only reason it's not going to be like R plus 20. So that's why I think Ohio, my great home state of Ohio, won't be like R plus 20. I think it'll be like R plus 10, R plus 15. Similar story with Florida. It's going to get much more Republican, but I don't think it's going to be like a safe trend compared to how it is now. I think it's just going to be likely. My great home state of Ohio, like I just said, and it's going to trend probably likely compared to how it is now. Ohio is weird because like it's pretty much trending to the right, but there are some places such as like Cincinnati, Delaware County, the suburbs of like Cincinnati and Columbus are definitely trending to the left a little bit. I think that's more of a Trump problem than anything, but still it's kind of worrying to look at. But really, Ohio's going to keep trending to the right. I think it voted for Trump by 8 points in 2020. In 2020, it voted for Trump by 8 points. I think in 2032, 2036, which is about when I'm thinking this election will take place in. The state will think that it'll trend about 5-6 points more to the Republican. I think the Republican in that in 2032 or so will win it by about 12, 15 points. Michigan will probably lean. Actually, maybe even likely. Lean or likely. I'm putting it as lean. Michigan's a weird state. It's definitely going to turn Republican. It's definitely going to be a Republican-leaning state. But really, it's not. It's not that great. There's the Grand Rapids is really concerning. The suburbs of Detroit were making huge gains with working class and suburban types, which is good. And the rural areas are pretty much maxed out. But in Detroit, it's losing population. But Grand Rapids and some other suburban, smaller cities, the Democrats are making huge gains there. So, which is kind of worrying. And the only reason I don't have it as likely, I think it will turn Republican and become a Republican-leaning state. But I don't think it's going to be as Republican as Ohio and Iowa and Wisconsin. Wisconsin's probably going to be safe to likely, in all honesty. I'm going to put it as likely just because I don't want to confuse it with all the other red states. But Wisconsin's going to trend hugely to the right compared to how it is now. It's going to be like the next Iowa or Ohio. It's going to be like R plus 8, R plus 10. Wisconsin, it's not going to vote blue again for a very long time, at least at the presidential level, and that's simply because of the drift list. We're going to get like a southern, rural South type margin in the drift list, and we also are pretty much even with the Democrats in the WoW county, so I don't think that's going to be a huge concern there. And then in South Wisconsin, like the not South, it's kind of like the southern suburbs part, like Racine County, that part of the state, the Republicans are going to keep making gains there, so I have it as likely are. Iowa, same as Ohio and Wisconsin, likely Republican, going to trend very much to the GOP. Not much to say there. Farmer is going to keep voting Republican. State of Illinois, I'm going to put as lean Republican. I think eventually Illinois will become a Republican-leaning state. Not a Republican-leaning state. It'll be more competitive, but I think it's going to be still a while away. And while Illinois will continue to trend Republican, it'll definitely be under 15 in 2024. I don't think the GOP is going to be able to really flip it. State of Minnesota, Minnesota's iffy. I'm going to put it as tilt Republican. I think it'll definitely move right compared to 2020, but I think just because 2020 won by like 6 or 7 points. But I think overall it's pretty stagnant, maybe tilt Republican, because the GOP will make some gains in the Iron Range, but the Democrats will make a lot of gains in the Minneapolis area that'll kind of even out. So really, it just is going to depend on the year and depend on the candidates. Nebraska's 2nd district, unfortunately, is probably going to be trend to the Democrats, but not by a whole lot. But it is going to slightly trend to the Democrats compared to how it is now. Very suburban. It's more of a Trump problem than anything, but I do think eventually it's going to be a Democrat leaning district. So like Don Bacon, the Republican representative there, he'll probably hang on. He's pretty popular, but I think on the presidential level, it's going to be gone for the GOP. Kansas, it's really only on here because I wanted to kind of balance out the Northeast. It's going to be probably lean Republican compared to how it is now. Pretty stagnant. I don't think the Democrats will flip it 10 years from now, although there is some worrying growth in the suburbs of Topeka and Kansas City. There's some worrying growth there. But overall, I think it's going to be about pretty stagnant, to maybe even a little bit more Republican, because the Republicans do have a lot of room to gain. In parts of the rurals are pretty maxed out, honestly. Kansas is probably going to be tilt, actually. It's pretty much going to be stagnant, maybe slightly trend to the right, really not that big of a difference. Texas, probably also going to tilt to the GOP. Blexus is probably not going to happen for a very long time. Well, actually, probably tilt Democrat, because I think Texas will get a little bit more competitive compared to how it is now, but really not too bad. So like I said, 10 years from now, Texas will probably be a little bit more Democratic than it is now, because there is a lot of worrying growth in the suburbs, like Dallas. Dallas is really concerning. Houston, I'm not too worried about. Houston, we have a lot of room to make up there. Austin, the Democrats are pretty much maxed out in. San Antonio is pretty much But Dallas, Fort Worth, I am very worried about that part of the state. The Democrats are making huge gains there, which is very concerning. But overall, I really think Texas is going to trend to the Democrats. At this point, it's probably not going to be a Democrat-leaning state, but it is definitely going to trend to the Democrats, probably compared to how it is now. Colorado probably lean. the Colorado's not going to be like, oh, the state that's going to vote Republican. It's just I think the Democrats are getting, maybe even likely, probably lean to likely. Democrats are going to keep making gains in Colorado. A lot of liberals from California moving into the state, so Colorado is definitely a lean Democrat. Is going to vote more Democrat than it does now. New Mexico probably lean if not likely Republican. Going to put it as lean, but I could see it New Mexico becoming likely more Republican than it is now. Um, a lot of Hispanic grades to make with Hispanics, working class voters, you know the type. So I think we'll do pretty well there. Arizona, however, that's going to be probably lean to tilt Democrat. I think it's going to be Arizona's going to be competitive and still vote Republican this decade, but I think by the 2030s, which is when this takes place, Arizona's going to be a Democrat-leaning state. So I think by that point, Arizona will have trended to the Democrats by quite a bit, probably a lean, if not likely, margin. And then the state of Nevada, that's probably going to lean to the Republicans compared to how it is now. Going to be probably a Republican leaning state, if not likely, honestly. Nevada, I could see being likely. Going to put it as lean because right now all we're seeing is kind of, we haven't actually had an election that certifies the trends we're seeing, but the trends appear to be happening. After 2022, Nevada may be likely if it votes for Laxalt by a huge margin. And then 2024, if the Hispanics turn out heavily and if we do very well there and Trump wins it, then I could see Nevada being trending likely compared to how it is now. But right now, I think Nevada is trending to the right, certainly, but not by a huge, I think it is trending by a huge margin, but we just haven't seen it set in stone yet. So that's the only reason it's lean. So with that, this is how I think every state will trend by the 2030s. Kind of a weird, random video. Probably going to confuse a lot of people based on my methodology and kind of the topic. But I think this is how every state will trend compared to now. The states that are safe doesn't mean I don't think they'll trend a different direction. I just don't think it'll be enough to make it anywhere near competitive. So with that, thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe for more.